Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. So apparently, Donald Trump got the message. He suspended the Jones Act, which prevented foreign ships from delivering anything to the island of Puerto Rico. And he also has now the military, the Army, is now taking over the mission in Puerto Rico to give them much-needed rebuilding. There's been ships stuck in harbor, 2,000, like tons or cargo tons just tons of, cargo just sitting there in the port waiting to be distributed. But there's no diesel fuel to get the trucks around. There's no drivers to get the trucks around. The island is really on fumes right now. But let's look at this for a minute. All of a sudden, all these days later, the military is now finally showing up to help out with Puerto Rico. I mean, I'm definitely not the president. You're not the president, unless you're watching, Mr. President. However, we're not the president, and we're not Congress. We're just regular people. We're citizens. And this kind of stuff is so obvious, right? It should be really obvious to us. We take care of our own, right? We should be taking care of our own. We hear all the Republicans in particular always talking about charity begins at home, man. I'm not worried about all that overseas stuff. Why aren't we taking care of our own here, Well, there you go, guys. Puerto Rico, right there, waiting for you to take care of, okay? Now, unfortunately, we people are left with very few options because we cannot commandeer the military to go down there on our behest. So we think naturally, hey, let's go ahead and kick over our piggy banks and dump a few coins in the kitty and see if we can help bail these folks out, okay? But, the reality is that this is all smoke and mirrors. This is all smoke and mirrors because the minute people understand that scarcity and the ability to help out Puerto Rico instantly, it should be like instantaneous. There should be no issue whatsoever. We shouldn't be thinking about it. We shouldn't be debating about it. It should be one of those things like, do I take my next breath, yes or no? I guess the answer is yes. That should be how simple it is to take care of these disaster zones. Hey, Rocco, how are you doing, sir? I think about this, and it's like, I wonder why we call this politics even. This shouldn't even be politics. This should be, seriously, this should be common sense. It shouldn't be about economics, but it somehow is. It shouldn't be a debate, and yet it somehow is. The reality is that any one of us, you and I, could make the decision yesterday. We could have made the decision as soon as it was apparent that Puerto Rico, St. Croix, and everywhere else, we could have made the decision instantly that we need to send help right now. And not just a band of, good well-wishers and, a bunch of opportunistic activists that don't have anything to really offer other than being able to be there and take a couple photo ops. It would be great if our government did its job, which is to take care of the general welfare of the people. Now, it's one thing not to grant Puerto Rico states' rights. It's one thing not to make them the 51st state, which is ridiculous. But it's another thing altogether to hold them as a territory and not treat them like human beings and not give them every bit of our support from the minute they scream we're in trouble to the end. As it is, foreign bankers are already coming in there saying, hey, we'll give people $50 a person. Like that's really going to do anything. We'll give you $50 a person, and when it's all said and done, we'll go ahead and ask for it back. Well, we don't need to make the people that are gone through this tragedy pay a nickel back. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. It's preposterous. It's preposterous that we have to, in any way, shape, or form, debate this. But I will tell you this much. We've watched our military go into Iraq. We've watched our military go into Afghanistan. We've watched our military go all around the world. And we've seen them blow things up. Well, now it looks like the military is going down there for humanitarian reasons and is going to help rebuild the island of Puerto Rico. So that's a good thing, as long as they don't turn this into some private investment opportunity for friggin', the payola, the in crowd, the ambulance chasers, if you will, of the natural disaster variety, running down there to make a nickel off the suffering of the people that have absolutely not a pot to piss in, folks. Not a pot to piss in. So, I guess the question I have for you is this. The Republicans, who are famous for talking about how we don't want to waste the taxpayer dollar, are now in this awkward position of having to admit that it's not the taxpayer dollar at all that's doing this. There is no such thing as the taxpayer dollar. So this should infuriate you, though it probably will not. Some of you it might. Most of you it will probably just go whew. But the reality is that it's not the taxpayer dollar. Taxpayer dollars have nothing to do with this bailout venture for Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is in uber debt. Even if they didn't have this natural disaster, Puerto Rico would still be a natural disaster like the country of Greece. Greece and Puerto Rico are very similar creatures. The only difference is that in the United States, we could physically bail them out without any issue. However, in Greece, they've got the benevolent Troika, the ECB, and the benevolent benefactors of Germany, who act like benevolent lords, who grant them certain austerity rights. But the reality is we've done the same goddamn thing to Puerto Rico. We put these people in charge that will control the money and implement austerity on the Puerto Rican people. Folks, our own countrymen and women are being treated like a freaking feudal state. These people are being put through what they do in Greece. Now, on top of it, they're dealing with a natural disaster. It's 150%, completely avoidable. None of this is real. It's all bullshit. But yet, there we go. The Republicans finally made a move to send someone down there. Now, Stephanie Kelton went off on Lindsey Graham the other night after the Republicans, and actually the Democrats, the combo deal, went ahead and approved this huge $700 billion budget for the military. Now, it's nice to know that we might get a few nickels of use out of it down in Puerto Rico for actually the public purpose. But the reality is that they didn't even flinch. He asked for $640 billion. They gave him $700 billion. Now, let's just spitball for a minute. What do you and I think we could do with $60 billion? What do you think we could do with $60 billion? I'm pretty sure we could friggin' make every single school in every single area friggin' state-of-the-art with $60 billion. Or at least the ones in the rundown areas where kids really need a hand up. We could easily improve the lives of our inner cities. We could easily fix the pipes in Flint, Michigan. We could easily give a job to every American that wants one that doesn't have one. So look down in Puerto Rico and let's keep an eye on it, folks. Let's keep a real close eye on it. Find out where the crony capitalism goes. Find out who, in fact, is actually benefiting from this disaster. Let's make sure that our government does the right thing by the people, for the people, and actually puts them first. It's time for us as activists, as citizens, as voters, to begin to understand that our government doesn't require our tax dollar to spend. You see it right now. You know it to be true. When the guys go out there and talk about Medicare for all next, you know that if they say how you're going to pay for it, that they are lying to you. And that means even St. Bernie Sanders, whom I love. But Bernie telling you that he's going to pay for it with taxes, we know it's a lie. We know it's a lie. But he's telling it for what reason? That's right, because we still think the government is run like a household budget. So guess who gets the short end of the stick on this stuff? We do. Guess who else really gets the short end of the stick on that lie? The poor. The poor suffer immensely because we believe that the currency issuing government is somehow or another constrained to our tax dollars. You'll begin to realize how ludicrous this is as you see people suffering from dysentery and other things down in Puerto Rico. And when the next disaster strikes, because folks, climate change isn't anywhere near done, baby. It ain't anywhere near done. We're going to see a whole lot more of this stuff. And so as we see it, and as we start wondering how in the world do we afford all these cleanups, you're going to start really remembering and really realizing that our nation is a currency creator, it's a currency issuer, and that it does these things as a matter of course. It doesn't require your tax money to do it. Okay? Taxes are very important, but they don't pay for anything. Taxes are super important because they're what give our dollar its value. But taxes don't pay for anything. It's kind of like a cost of keeping the dollar valuable. They tax you for it, right? But it doesn't pay for anything. So when they tell you that they can't help Puerto Rico, they can't help Houston, they can't help, well, you already see they're doing it, right? You already see they're doing it. No tax hikes occurred. No tax hikes occurred. Oh, guys, we got to hurry up. We got to tax everybody really high real quick so we can bail out Puerto Rico. No. Puerto Rico still needs to be bailed out, folks. Puerto Rico's finances should be wiped off the books instantly. They have absolutely no means of paying any of their debts back. This is absolutely the case of a situation where our nation must absolve Puerto Rico of all its debts and let it start afresh with the understanding that an island nation that has very little productive capacity, that relies heavily on tourism and relies heavily on imports, should be supplemented majorly by the sovereign, the United States federal government. So with that, I hope you guys take some opportunities to look at each of these issues as they come up, analyze them through the lens of understanding the United States government has a sovereign currency. When you hear debates with Bernie and these other fools, know, even when you love Bernie, know that Bernie is not telling the truth because you can't handle the truth. Not you, but you, right? So we got to make sure that we educate. And people can say, oh no, Steve's going to talk about MMT again. And you know what? Until I see the Green Party saying we're all about MMT, until I see the Democratic Party coming out and going, hey man, we are all about MMT. And until I see the Republicans going, yeah, I guess we don't have to let people die anymore. We're all about MMT. Guess what Steve Grumbine is going to fucking talk about? MMT. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Keep your eye on Puerto Rico. It's time to rock this shit, man. Have a good night, everyone.